This is the Everett City Council Committee on Ways and Means. This is Thursday, January 15th, and we're at 6 p.m. I am Councilor Napolitano. Here. I am Councilor Delashula.
Here.
I am Councilor Capone.
Here.
I am Councilor DeFlorio. We have 4 members present. We do have a quorum.
All right, can we rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance? The clerk read the first item of business.
We do have a...
What's that? Okay, I've announced first that Council John Hanlon will be unable to attend tonight's meeting as he is sick.
All right, the first piece of business. This is a resolution up by Councilor Rosa DeFlorio to study the compensation level of the school committee and city council.
I think I don't know, we had asked, requested the school committee members to come up. Does anybody have any questions for them? I personally don't have any questions. I've done this study before.
Council Del Sol?
I think last meeting, we had a couple of questions that they took down, that we wanted a couple of answers, if
David Eler up
somebody wants to be a spokesman, or...
Whoever.
and Frank Parker. And I'll-
Okay, if you could, I'll direct the meeting.
Oh, cool.
Good evening, gentlemen. If you could
Thank
state your names for the record.
Frank Parker, Chairman of the School Committee, 28 Freeman Ave, Everett.
David Eler, Chairman of Subcommittee on Finance, 19 Henry Street in Everett.
Council Del Sol?
I think last meeting, a few of my colleagues had a couple of questions of, just a quick, just tell us what your job titles are. I don't want to get into it, it'd be too long, because you guys do a lot with, you have like 800 employees? Is that, am I correct with that?
Close to
Yes,
900 almost now.
900, and it just keeps going up.
Yeah, I mean, from a numeric standpoint, close to 900 employees, 7,200 students, and we manage a budget of $85 million. So, 10 years ago, that budget was what, 40, 35?
45 or 30, 35 or 40 million dollars, yes.
Yeah, so lots happened over the last 10 years, both from, number of employees, number of students, the school building program, we have new schools, but also, the added responsibilities, through federal and local legislature, or, the changes in education. It changed dramatically over the last decade, whether it's, addition of, pre-K, 3, 4-year-olds, free lunch, well, not free lunch, but free breakfast for everybody. The ability to continue providing resources to the kids outside of the curriculum, and not having them to pay for it, such as, sports, arts, music. There's no user fees till this point. And, we believe that we had to do some very prudent fiscal practices and adhering to the budget. So,
Salary you're at now, when was the last time that you guys did get a pay increase?
Sal DiDomenico was president of the Common Council, so I don't know when that was.
I believe it was into the 2000s, after 2006. Prior to that, we never received any compensation. We would only receive compensation for any expenses we may have incurred if we were traveling, representing the school department. But that's, at that time was when we first received any compensation. Was, I believe it was after 2000, it might have been even after 2007 election, which was 2008. And then that's when our salary was set, based on the same salary of the city council at the time.
If there was a pay increase, it would come out of your budget itself?
Yes.
Yes.
I just want people to know that it comes out of your budget.
Mhm.
Okay, I got no further questions at the moment.
Council Capone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
Frank, congratulations on the
Thank-
chairmanship.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Hardest working guys in the city. Here we go.
Okay.
Having done, I know, looking at the numbers, 900 employees, 7,200 students, the number of the budget, as you said, Dave, not paid forever. And then finally, the $5,500 stipend to match the common council at that point in time, long overdue. Having, as far as subcommittees and things, if you just give me a flavor, and whoever may be watching at home, a little flavor of what the school committee does, what kind of time commitments involved with regards to how many meetings a month you would do, or hours, or whatever you think might be helpful to kind of understand what kind of time commitment goes with it.
We can both, I'm sure,
Yeah.
share. I know as far as Subcommittee on Finance, we're waiting for the governor's budget to come out at the end of this month, and there will probably have anywhere between 5 or 6 meetings with the superintendent and the administrative staff going over the fiscal 2016 budget, and we've been doing that right along over the, excuse me, the last several years. When contract negotiations come up, it sometimes can be 2-3 nights going out into negotiations in that subcommittee and dealing with all our collective bargaining units. And also, this past year, we had to work as a committee to develop and negotiate with the superintendent about the new evaluation process for the superintendent that, probably took us several meetings, and we actually do have to review his progress as an administrator twice a year. And then that's finance negotiations, and I'm sure occasionally we'll get issues on property. We'll have meetings before our meetings. We'll have finance meetings to review all our budgets and go over the burn rates every month. And usually the second part of the fiscal year, the school administration will give us the burn rates for exactly how we're doing with our budget, and I think that that's one issue that came up through the city council a few years ago when we asked for an extended appropriation because of some of the cutbacks and some of the growth that we had, unexpected growth, and we realized that we need to look at it and look at the expenditures, and we've been doing that right along for the last 3 to 4 years, knowing exactly what our burn rates are, and discussing them at least once a month in open meeting. Never mind all the other activities that we extend.
Right, so, primarily how we work is, we have our meetings twice a month, 6:30. We tend to have our subcommittee meetings prior to that. Sometimes some nights starting as early as 5 o'clock. Some meetings last 15 minutes, some last, an hour. So that's the bulk of it. The two most active subcommittees by far are finance and negotiations. Especially budget season, which would come up pretty soon. That could be, a night a week for 12 weeks straight. Negotiations can tend to be intense. The other stuff meets sporadically. Sometimes it's feast or famine. But then we've got a lot of events that we attend. Lucky for us, they tend to be fun events. It's sporting events, it's music. But you looked at our calendar back in December, and every night there seemed to be like a different concert going on at our high school. And again, those are fun events. It's good to be there, but yet there's a commitment in our capacity to show the kids and show the parents that we're there for them, we appreciate it, and we enjoy it. So it adds up. One thing I do want to bring to your attention is as we compare the school committee today versus what it was 10 years ago, and I think that's probably part of the direction that you should take. Back when the school committee was making had no salary, it was different then. It wasn't as much responsibility, it wasn't much policy. We weren't dealing with social media. We weren't dealing with cell phones. The demographics of the population were different. Today we have 80% of our students out of below poverty level. I'm sure back then it might have been like 50%. English being spoken at home. 80% of our students, English is not a primary language and spoken at home. 10 years ago it was different when we weren't drawing a salary. Not only is our school population increasing, but it's the type of students we're getting in the increase. All the children that are coming into the Everett Public Schools nowadays, no matter what age they are, right, tend to require an IEP, individual education plan. So it's not just that we're getting, kids that can just.
Another body in the classroom.
Right, so, with that, why do we have 900 employees? Well, kids with IEPs might need an aide to be with them all day long. So, like I said, 10 years ago, things were different. Now, we get different challenges, and we're always looking for new and creative ways to face those challenges. And case in point is the reopening of the Devon School. So the Devon School has about, today, it was opened in September of 13, and they currently have about 45 children in that school. So these are kids that, 2 years ago would have been, for lack of a better term, outsourced. We wouldn't be able to provide those services. We would have sent them out to a different district or a different private school that could address their needs at the time, which is a very expensive process. I mean, some of these tuitions can be $100,000 to $150,000 a year. So collectively, along with the administration, the superintendent, Mr. Bremsky and Dr. Stella and the school committee, we sat down to try to figure out how can we address this? Year after year, special education goes up and up and up. What can we do differently? And that's when we came up with the concept of let's, look at the feasibility of reopening the Devon School and bringing these kids back in. So I'm a big fan of the Devon School because, here we are. 2 years ago, these kids would have been outsourced, right? Now they're going to school. It's a neighborhood school. They're making avid friends. They participate in homecoming. Some of the kids that, classified as high school students down there actually participate in sports. One was on the football team. There's some on the track team. So from a community aspect, it's worked out really well. But in the meantime, we're saving money. Last year, we were hit with the challenge that we had to cut our budget by $1.2 million. And the reason we had to cut it is because, year after year, we followed the direction of the governor. This is the number that you should use and you should budget with. And that's the number that we use with the mayor's office, to come across the budget. So what happened was, unfortunately, we set our budget by July 30th. The state tends to set their budget sometimes afterwards. And at that point, it was cut. And that's when the state came back and said, we're going to give you $1.2 million less. So therefore, we were facing a deficit. So because of the Devon School, we were able to address that cut. And, the fascinating part is that we cut our budget $1.2 million by increasing services at the Devon School. So, we would enjoy, let's call it $1.2 million surplus that year that we probably would reallocate it, somewhere else along the pipe, whether it be additional teachers, additional resources. But the point of the matter is that, $1.2 million is a big cut, real big cut, and we've had those before, especially during the Romney administration, when he came in mid-year, was the
9C cuts.
the 9C cuts. We all had a scramble collectively. So my point is that, 10 years ago, we weren't doing stuff like that, and today we are, to the benefit, of the taxpayer, but also to the kids that we're obligated to provide the best services in the safest environment that we can.
And how many bargaining units are there in the school department?
I think it's 5 or 6.
Yeah, there's the unions, and then there's
There's I'd have to write them down, but I believe there's
teachers
about 5.
union.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's about 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And I wasn't part of the discussion when, I know there was a debate a little while back about a number. Then Counselor McGonigal was talking about a figure that was passed out before. I don't know if it's an accurate number or not, but it was a number of 10 that he had mentioned at one point in time. I know there's an expense account. We have an expense account too. A lot of folks don't understand how that expense account works. You just don't get money. And, with the concept in mind that it's public service for all of us.
Right.
No one's looking to get rich off it. It's not a job you get paid for. Because I know how diligent all of you guys work, and I know that we do as well.
Sure.
If you actually start doing the math on the hours, it's a big losing proposition. But you're doing it because you're trying to help the community. At the same time, you shouldn't take a bath by doing public service. And what I mean by that is, this is the first time this past year was the first time I got to experience a full citywide run, which is a much different animal than the ward race I used to do all those years ago. And, you know, there's donations and there's ads, and that's not expense money. Can't touch that for that.
No.
So you got newspaper ads, if you're doing donations with different organizations, you folks, I'm sure, within the school, there'll be different activities, they'll be looking for an ad in an ad book, program book, something of that nature, donation to help the kids go off to Florida. We all see that. So in addition to running citywide and all the time and the effort that you put into it, then you're reaching into your pocket as well to make all these donations for worthy causes.
Yeah.
So do you have a figure in mind that you're thinking about? I know 55, clearly 55 is too low.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest, it's too low. I can't imagine that all those years, people were putting in time and service and sacrifice at zero.
Yeah.
So what do you see as a number that would, you know, obviously it wouldn't be full compensation, but
Yeah.
what do you see as a number that would be more helpful to allow you to continue to do public service without really digging in too hard into your own pocket?
Let me first, I think tonight's meeting is a continuation where we left off 2 years ago. Because, you know, one of the things that's part of the discussion, if you're serious about, you know, this increase, is that it has to happen before June 30th, right? And what happened 2 years ago is that as the numbers were going back and forth, there was never really a solid number of what would be presented to us. I mean, I know there was a number of $7,000 that was based because that's what Marlin was getting, because they got the same type of kid, or not the same type of kid, the same type of population. But I can tell you, we felt, you know, in the meeting, right, that, you know, that was unacceptable. You know, we thought it could be, it should be more. You know, what I think is a fair number, I don't know. You know, unfortunately, it's not like we met, we talked about this, right?
Mhm.
You can't do that.
Right.
But,
No, I know in the past,
Yeah.
the reason why we were, received the $5,500, because it was to match the city council
Yeah.
at the time, and at
Right.
the time, that compensation number was based on what the aldermen received, and I believe it was just about, it was about 78%, 75%. So if it's coming down to wanting to be similar to what the practice was in the past, if you want to have the school committee at 75% of the city council, that's a decision that you as members of the city council have to make, because we can't set our own salaries. I will let you know that, you know, within our budget and our administrative costs, both our salary and the expenses are already budgeted for. So, you know, that would be $4,000, that's, you know, $9,500 per person. So that's already been in place in the budget for this fiscal year. And so whatever increase above and beyond that, if you waive the process of having an expense account, and just make it a flat compensation for services, you know, for our services that we provide, then so be it. And then it may, if it goes up $2, $3, whatever, how many $1,000s, we're talking, if it's $3,000 more, you're talking $27,000 off an $85 million foundation budget and a $70 million operating budget, because, you know, part of our foundation budget, you know, gets paid back to make sure that we pay for all our employees' health insurance, our charter school costs, our retired teachers' costs. So that's why the two numbers are different.
And I just have one final question. I appreciate the indulgence of the committee. I know that on the council, the usage of the reimbursement, the expense account, it's kind of fluctuates, it's staggered. Are you guys finding that consistently it's being used and not used? It's there for a reason. It's part of the charter. It's not an allegation.
Yeah.
It's part of the charter. It was the voters determined that it's reasonable, that there are out-of-pocket expenses, I know I personally haven't used anything, but that doesn't mean that that's right or wrong.
Yeah.
You pay for a phone, you use your cell phone, you use email, you pay for postage, if letters go, these are all legitimate expenses.
Yeah.
Are you finding that the folks in the school committee are using it, or?
I can only speak for myself.
Okay.
I do, you know, for those items that obviously are, you know, that meet the guidelines, you know,
Right.
so it goes through. I submit my finances, my expenses on a monthly basis to Mr. Abramsky, who reviews them, and then they get signed off, you know, all the way up to the city hall, so I know I'm using it.
As am I, and as the school committee's representative to the Mass Association of School Committees, where I've had to travel, stay in hotels or get meals, I've expensed those.
Yeah.
But I've been doing that for 10 years.
And we're so happy that Mr. Ela does that, you know, all of us would be willing to share some of our expenses with him so he can continue to do so.
Yeah, and it is, they're legitimate out-of-pocket expenses that is over and above public service, so, and that's
Right.
the whole purpose of why that was put in. So I really appreciate the information. I have no other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
All right, from the chair, if I could, I did receive a phone call from Councilman Hanlon, who did have a question that he wanted to put before you. His question was primarily if we approved an increase, is the superintendent bound by that, or is he able to adjust it?
I don't know. It'd be based on your charter. Last I knew that if I read the charter correctly, the last
Yeah.
time I read it, that the city council is the only one that can approve
Right.
any pay increase and what the amount actually will be. That the superintendent does not have any say in that.
Right.
And it's bound by the city council chart, the city of Everett charter.
And if I
The
could just add.
salaries are based by, controlled by the charter.
Right.
Yes.
And if I could just add to that, I mean, if that 5,500 came into place since 2008, and here we are in 2015, that situation has never arose. It's the first time I've even heard a question like that. It's a good question.
Yeah.
You know, makes some good discussion, but no. You know, your body for the charter would set the salary, and I think us as honorable men who respect the city charter, you know, would accept your decision and not go back and try to, you know, do something else, right? So,
Because ultimately, it would be in our budget, we'd have to approve our budget, and we could just say, no, we don't approve of that.
yeah,
Yeah, there's no question in my mind that you gentlemen earn your salary, and that's
Yeah.
something, so I just, again, wanted to put the question.
yeah.
Councilman Del Sol?
Just an idea, on the salary increase, we could do a research, the council, of the members here, and on average from the surrounding cities.
Actually,
We actually have something for you?
I could, I could
Try
pass
to
up-
apples for apples, because, you know, every
could
city
pass
has
up-
different situations and
Yeah, you know,
number of
it's-
students.
It's a benchmark.
There's different figures in here. That's Malden now, as of today, that is the Berkeley data, so why don't you check that out? You have
Yeah, so,
So there's a big difference there. If you look at this figure, the Malden figures, let me know what you come up with.
Oh, actually, yeah.
Councilman DeHort?
Appreciate
Thank you.
seeing that tomorrow.
I just want to bring something to light, that this did come out, we did do this in the Finance Committee last year. Now, when you're looking at these papers, you have to understand that a lot of these places, they also have health benefits. They also have an expense account, which I don't, I see that the school committee did put this down. So we have to take that into consideration, because my question actually is, I'm sorry, I'd like to ask the city auditor this question. How much does it cost for health benefits for a family plan if a council or a school committee member would be on it?
You wanna come up with the hearing?
I can hear you.
About $17,500.
So it's about $17,500 a year that most city councilors, because this is both city councilors and school committee, don't forget. So we can't go by our pay, because we're getting underpaid compared to the study that was done 2 years ago. So it's hard to set the school committee pay if we don't set our own pay. And most of the city council members do get health benefits in other cities, which is $17,500. We don't even make that. We've saved the city $17,500 just in health benefits. And like we said, I agree with Council Capone. We're not here for the money, because if we were here for the money, we wouldn't be lasting this many years and putting in this many hours and doing this much work. But we have a lot of work in front of us. And this isn't for us. I want to clear one other thing. This doesn't take effect to the next election, which means we might not even be here. It doesn't mean we're guaranteed to get elected, not is the school committee guaranteed to get elected. So this isn't for us. We have to make this decision now for the future, and that's it. Let's just make the decision, and that's it. Last year, the city council come out at $23,000. The school committee, I believe, either come out at $12,500 or $13,500. Okay, I'm not 100% sure, but that's what it come out. And we spend a lot of time in committee to do that and to come up with that figure. So I understand we have new members, but let's make the final decision, let's make it right, and let's just go on. And the other thing is, when we did make the salary last year, all being fair, we didn't know anything about the expense account. So being fair, we want to give the school committee members $13,500, cut down the expense account. We're allowed to do that, I believe, Mr. Chairman. I know by charter we have to give an expense account.
Right, but at this stage of the meeting, do you have a question for the members of the school committee?
No, I had a question for Mr. Viscay, which he already answered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you have?
Can I ask a question of the
Please.
committee? In your conversations about compensation, has there been any discussion about adding a cost of living adjustment that would kick in automatically on a set period of time moving forward? So, if not, just a suggestion to think about it further in committees, to kind of, streamline the process and not have to do this every 2 years,
If you wanted to use a 2-year average, you use an average every 2 years before, or 4 years, or however you'd want to do
Yeah.
it, is every, before the next elections, before the next election cycle, which is, in the odd number of years, to discuss and look at a cost of living and look at the cost of living index and adjust the salaries of both the city council and the school committee based on that cost of living, of the average cost of living for that 2-year period, and just implement that for each successive 2-year term. Mhm.
Thank you.
So moved. Thanks, guys.
Thank you
you,
for
guys.
coming up. Your pleasure? The sponsor, your pleasure?
If we
Please.
could, if we could invite Rich Viscay up, because I know we heard it, but I don't know if everyone else heard it. Rich, you mind coming on up?
Okay.
Thank you. So the point that Council DeFlorio made was one of the reasons when the council, again, I was on the outside looking in, so I wasn't part of the discussions, but one of the factors to be considered in the stipend was removal of health insurance benefits. And I know that you had sent a number up. I don't know if the folks at home had heard that. So how much was it per individual or individual family that the additional cost would be for if we were to add on health insurance, which we can't? But how much would that have cost the bottom line?
Yeah, in round figures, that city contribution for an individual plan is around $6,000 a year, and for a family plan, it's about $17,500 a year.
So 6,000 plus 17,500, and that's.
That's
school-
85% of the total cost. It's an 85-15 split.
Now, the school committee doesn't get health insurance coverage as well. do
I don't
they?
believe so. They would know,
Right,
but I don't
so
believe so.
same type of numbers that you're talking about.
Can I clarify that?
Sure. We have Frank up, please?
Yeah, thank you. Back when we negotiated the 5,500, the question of health insurance came up,
Mhm.
and at that point, we basically presented and adhered to a gentleman's agreement that we would not participate, because I believe back then, of course, with a different charter, we could.
Okay.
So the decision back then was just a handshake agreement that we wouldn't, and we adhered to that.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that's the history behind it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, excuse me.
Are there, from a fiscal point of view, are there any other costs under the new structure that is being saved versus the old structure, or no? I mean, basically, I think the expenses were stipend, health insurance, I really think that was it, under the old, yeah. But that was all there was, right? There was nothing else.
No, I mean, I think the big difference is that there's a some specific amount allowed for expenses for counselors now, where in the past, I wasn't here, but it's my opinion, if you did city business, you were probably entitled for some reimbursement, but I don't believe that practice was used. There was no reimbursements for cell phones or internet or what have you, so I think, but when you do the math between the 25 members of the old alderman and common council, and you do the math with the new setup, I believe there is a savings, and with the no health insurance, and I don't have a specific amount, but I believe there is a net overall savings in the new setup.
Okay, thank you, I don't have any other questions.
Second? Do I have a motion?
Well, I have a question on the expense account. I don't know if anybody can answer it.
Who do you want to direct it to?
In regards to expense account, maybe John can answer that for us. We set it at 4,000, but we can set it at any other amount, is that correct? The charter doesn't tell us. The charter says we must have an expense account, but they don't say how much we have to have. So can we make it,
You can adjust it.
We can adjust it. okay, so if we come up with a figure on the school committee and we say your expense account is not to be more than whatever, say round figure 1,500, we are allowed to do that.
Pat,
Just here.
we're actually looking at that right now.
Okay, that's, yeah, I want to be clear before we set an amount.
Well, if I could, from the chair, my own personal opinion is I think the issue of reimbursement and salary are two different issues here, especially regarding to the school committee. I think they've made it clear that they are utilizing the amount of their reimbursement. It's a question of whether or not they're properly compensated for their salaries. That's an opinion I feel. I don't know if any other members share that. But Councilor Capone?
Yeah, my overall sense at this point is clearly $5,500 for the amount of time and effort that these folks put in is ridiculous. So we need to look at that. I appreciate all the information that we received this evening. I know firsthand about the council situation, but on a personal note, I wouldn't be ready to vote on any kind of a number this evening. I'd like to take a look at the information. I'd like to check out these charts, verify what local communities are getting, both school committee and council members, and then at that point, be in a better position to discuss it. Especially, I think the cost of living adjustment might be a good mechanism to address this, so that you don't have a council every 2 years, trying to figure out what to do. You want to do something that's fair, that is in the best interest of the community, that isn't going to cause any kind of fiscal disaster for anybody. At the same time, make sure that public service doesn't end up costing you money. Obviously, there's time. We're here because we want to do it. But if you've got a family, when you're here at a meeting, you're not with your family. If you run a business, you're here, you're not at your business. So at the end of the day, I think we need to look at everything that's going on, come up with some sort of a structured formula, program, something that can work its way forward. This whole process is new for everybody. So there's going to be things that need to be fixed along the way. And I'd be asking for further time in order to be able to take a look at all this, try to figure out what I think would be the best thing to do, we could get together again at some point down the road, and then we could, come up with ideas and brainstorm about it and see what we think works best.
Can I get a second on that?
I believe, just to add to that, we have, I don't mind doing that because we have plenty of time. I believe we have until June to pass something like this, is that correct? Okay, so I second that motion.
Okay, if I could just read one thing from the charter, though, because I want to clear up the issue about expense reports. This is section 4.4, compensation expenses. Subject to appropriation, school committee members shall be entitled to reimbursement of their actual and necessary expenses occurred in the performance of their duties. Now, it's subject to appropriation. So the school committee as a body controls its own decisions regarding compensation for reimbursement. So in that respect, I think it's important that we take that off the discussion. We're strictly talking about salaries here. Let's stick to what the council decides in its discussions regarding our own expense is our decision based on our own expenses. But they know how much they're spending. If they make a determination that they need to increase it because it's fair and reasonable, that's in their realm. That's not up to us. Okay, so
Well, the
let's
reason-
keep the discussion here strictly to, but they're not required to, and the charter just allows them to set their own appropriations. So in that regard, we should keep the discussion strictly to salaries. Okay, so I have a motion to grant further time. All in favor?
Aye.
Second? Okay, so moved. Thank you for coming up, gentlemen. Okay. And if I could ask that we have a representative from the school department on the next time we bring this piece up, not necessarily all of you, but if, I think it's important that someone from your body has a voice when we discuss this, we bring this back as we're granting further time. No, just if, we'll let you know when next meetings we're bringing the subject up. That's what I mean. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Clerk could read item number 2.
Item number 2, this is a resolution offered by Council Peter Napolitano that the city auditor provide to the city council committee of Ways and Means at their first meeting a breakdown of current overtime paid out in this fiscal year, actually last fiscal year, from city services.
Come before it.
Counselor, you have a question for?
Yes. All right, this okay. With this conversation came up regarding the overtime for city services during the budget hearings. And, there was a few efforts on our part to try to cut it. The mayor's stance was that the amount needed to stay the same, and that's fine. I just want to know where we are at 6 months into the fiscal year, where we stand, how much overtime have we utilized in city services, how much is left, where we stand toward going into the second half of the year.
Sure. Right now, when you talk city services, I'm assuming you're not talking about water and sewer department, just the general fund city services, or? I got both, if you'd
What I'm
like.
talking about is anyone that is privy to that, was it 400,000 overtime line item?
I believe it's $300,000, $350,000. Give me 1 second, I'll get to it in the budget book here. The overtime budget for city services was set at $300,000, $50,000 on top of that was for snow and ice removal. As of today, the amount that has been spent is $364,672, so we've pretty much at or exceeded what was appropriated. But I will say that I have a breakdown, I don't know how much of a breakdown you want it, but we basically break our payroll down in highways, facility, and parks. I have a breakdown of the three that make up that total. And it's $192,000 for the highway department, $73,000 for facility, and $99,000 for parks. So that's the three numbers that will equal that. Now, within the bottom line appropriation for the entire budget, we're talking about a $3.23 million operation at City Services. So while that particular line item is over what was appropriated halfway through the year, there are some circumstances. I mean, we've had one individual actually pass away, unfortunately, and we've had 4 people out on long-term workers' compensation. So I'm not here to speak of all the specifics of the moving parts, kind of a bean counter here in this respect, but there are 5 positions that have not been filled due to one circumstance or another that is definitely contributing to the increase in overtime. But to answer specifics about where and what and why, I would probably have to defer to City Services Director or the Acting Director at this point.
That was actually my next question. Who is actually monitoring and watching over how the overtime is spent to make sure that what's budgeted? I mean, you know, I'm not going to dispute that circumstances do come up that will push the envelope on a budgeted item. But 6 months into the year, I've already exhausted that money, but we still have another 6 months to go. I mean, the choices are either no overtime till next fiscal year, or we appropriate more money. And then the question comes, where is it coming from? So who is it that's the watchdog? Who is it that's watching over to make sure that the overtime is spent properly to ensure that there is overtime to be able to ensure other future endeavors?
Well, I think on a macro level, ultimately, it's my responsibility as the overseer of the entire city budget. But again,
But you're not authorizing somebody to work this weekend or come in and put in extra time or, you know.
no, like I said, on a macro level, I'm talking about budget-wise. On a day-to-day operations, that would be the Public Works Director and the superintendents of the respective departments, highway facilities, parks. And even underneath those, there are certain departments that, you know, there's the vehicle, the mechanics, there's the cemetery, there's a bunch of, and there's, you know, the hierarchy, so to speak, would be the superintendents, and then the foreman, and then the laborers. So, again, on a day-to-day basis, whether it's, you know, an emergency, whether it's a special event, whether it's just, you know, we got people backfilling for vacations, and whatever the issue is of the day is managed by the director and the superintendents of public works.
Who is currently in charge of the operations down there? I understand that the former director had stepped down or left.
The former director has taken a new job in Belmont, and we have Jerry Navarra and we have Ernie LaRavia kind of serving as co-directors of city services at this point. That's where we stand right now.
And are they aware that they've exhausted their overtime
Well aware.
budget line?
This is, yes, yeah.
Are you privy to if they have a plan of action how to address it? Or should we bring them up at some point?
No, I mean, the plan is that we're aware of the overtime. Again, when you look at this as a bottom line, $2.3 million total salary for city services, to the extent that, I mean, in round numbers, if we have 5 individuals that say they make $50,000 each and none of them are on the payroll for one reason or another, that particular salary line could be shifted around within the orgs of the salary that could help compensate this. So again, not doing cost accounting here, but if I'm saving $250,000 in salaries because I got 5 guys out on long-term disability or have passed away, that capacity there could be shifted down to offset the balance. So, I mean, every payroll that's posted, every warrant that's posted, I print out these reports, I'm monitoring it, I'm relaying it to the departments. We bring them in to discuss not only salary lines, but expenditure lines where we stand. So it's always being monitored and discussions on, you know, where's the squeaky wheel gets the grease sometimes. If we have a water main break, you may have to throw a bunch of people here. If you have some kind of other outbreak or some special circumstance, sometimes the labor's directed there. But that, like I said, on the micro level, it's managed by the operations of the city services, and on a macro level, I'm looking at that and working with departments in all facets of the city, just to try to ensure that by the time June 30th comes, we'll stay within our budget. And then, of course, if it looks like there's nothing we can do within the appropriations that were given to us, we'd come forward to you and ask for a supplemental appropriation.
Well, it's just, yeah, the amount what was budgeted came from the department. We did make some attempts to try to cut it, and we were assured that it would be a sufficient amount. And now, like I said, 6 months into the year, we're finding it's already exhausted. So that's one of our main concerns. All right, well, I want to step back in case anybody else has any questions.
Just from the chair for 1 second. Can you go over the figures again?
Oh, all right, so, like I said, I tried to, when I read the order, I tried to interpret what you're looking for, a breakdown. So in our payroll system, we have the highway department as one code, and that's $192,581. We have facilities, $73,090, 73090, and parks, $99,001. And that's about 27 weeks through the year, so that's about where we are. And the total of that is $364,672. 73,090.
Okay, Councilor Capone, get a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was going to be my first question. I missed that last one. I missed the Parks number. All right, so roughly about $364,000. And this was the amount, as Councilor Napolitano had stated, the $300,000 was supposed to cover the full year, and here we are halfway through. I know that you're very diligent about looking over the numbers and monitoring. How frequently do you do that, and how frequently is discussed with the department if they tend to be spending through their money? How often does that happen?
It's as often as it needs to be. Certainly departments, the larger departments, your police, your fire, your city services, those are your kind of big three here, so I monitor those pretty closely. Like I said, every time we post a payroll, every time we post expense warrants, I print those reports, I thumb through them. I have frequent conversations with both chiefs, Jay Marcotte in the past, and now again, Jerry and Ernie in my office. I've spent an extraordinary amount of time with the two new acting directors now, trying to get them up to speed, and they're well aware where we are, and we're trying to, address the situation. Like I said, some of these things are driven by bodies that we don't have that we're trying to backfill, and then others are just circumstances that come up on a day-to-day, and what's driving that, again, I'm not really prepared to talk about
Right.
what happened in July, what happened in August, what happened in September.
All right, and so those three figures, parks, facilities, and highway, that was budgeted at 300 for that, correct?
That's correct.
And then we're at 364 for that.
That's correct.
And now with the snow and ice overtime, that was 50?
Yeah, now I will say this was the first time in fiscal year 15 that I had actually taken, I believe it was $350,000 was typically budgeted for overtime. I took $50,000 and put it in there. I do believe, and I haven't had a chance to research this, but I'm pretty sure we haven't spent $1 of our snow and ice money.
That's my question.
So
Yeah.
I believe
We
that
haven't
some
done
of these
that.
costs will be allocated to
Okay.
the snow and ice budget, but we just kind of had our last few snow and ice salting situations over the last couple of weeks, so I did raise that question. I said, I don't see any money being hit to this, so I have to work with the clerical to make sure that they understand that there's a second overtime account that they're supposed to use for snow and ice stuff. So although this is over by $64,000, there's a good chance that some of this money, there's actually, I know it, I just don't know how much that is actually should be in that account.
Sure. And I think we all realize that things happen. No one has a crystal ball. Expenses do occur. Yeah, I'm making phone calls for potholes almost on a daily basis. You need to do it for safety, number of other reasons. One thing I did have a concern about when we were sitting here in the summertime talking about the budget was I noticed that we had people watering plants and sweeping streets on Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. I brought that up. I was told that the mayor wants clean streets. Well, we all want clean streets. But the suggestion that I made was that let's wait till the next business day. You know, a street has sand on it for an extra day, it's not the end of the world. Do you have any ability to be able to determine exactly how much overtime was directly related to street sweeping or watering of plants on weekends and holidays?
Me personally, I would have to do some research, and I can't say at the level of city services that they have actually a daily log that says what exactly which person was doing every time he worked overtime.
Right.
But again, maybe a question for, you know, with Jay being gone, it may be something that maybe some of the superintendents could help me answer. And, you know, certainly, I'm certainly happy to go back and try to gather the questions and work with them, or, you know, we
Yeah,
could certainly have them here next
It
time.
was an issue I raised, and, you know, it was addressed, at least addressed why.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have noticed is I'm still seeing not so much plants anymore, because we're not in that season, but I'm seeing street sweepers on Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. And quite honestly, I understand the need for clean streets, and it's not your decision, and I'm not coming at you, but that's an expenditure of overtime funds that's part of this 300 that shouldn't necessarily be there. There should still be a little bit more room in here for those other things that we can't account for. When you do have disasters, accidents, you do have additional work that needs to be done to roadways in order to make it safer for pedestrians and for vehicles. And that was the concern I had back then about spending overtime during those timeframes. And quite honestly, I haven't seen anything change. So I'm kind of interested to know exactly how much we're talking about. If there's a way to find that easy enough, fine. If not, it's a factor of how the money's being spent, that's all. And I just wanted to point out that it hasn't been lost on me that it's still being spent that way.
Understood, and I can certainly go back and try to, you know, hone in on which individuals in highway, for example, you know, are responsible for street sweeping, and how much those individual, I mean, that would be the kind of, I mean,
Yeah, and I'm not looking to hurt anybody. I know that overtime in many capacities, folks tend to consider it part of the salary. They become dependent on it. You know, they're paying their expenses, they're maintaining their families, and I don't want to hurt anybody. But I think as a city, especially one of the things that we were talking about during the budget process last year was that we're all feeling the economy. And now, hopefully, now we've got the casino coming in, there will be more funds. It won't be as pressurized, but I think we still need to be fiscally responsible. And we all need to tighten our belts collectively. And if we're asking the folks at home to do it, as a government, we need to do it too. And, you know, we're talking about stipends and everything else. I mean, these are all things that have to be looked at. But, you know, that's all I wanted to say on that issue. But if it turns out it's too difficult to try to break it down, I don't want you going bananas. I know you work hard enough as it is, that you need us to keep asking you for different things every other week. So if it's easy enough, great. If it's not, and this is not a shot at the people who are doing the work. They're doing what they're told. And it's not a shot at anyone, really. It's just an acknowledgement that we need to be more careful how we're spending our money. And that's all it is.
Oh, I agree, and I mean, I think I'm as good a steward of the city's money, I think, as anybody in the city, and I think just to have people who are listening at home understand a few things. There is a balance of whether, you know, when you have overtime, there is consideration to, should we fund overtime or should we hire more additional personnel? Now, if we hire more additional personnel, that's more health insurance. Now, we went over $17,500. We're talking about retirement benefits, we're talking about workers' comp, unemployment, all that stuff.
Absolutely. All
So
comes
some,
to
some,
expense.
if you were to ask city services, or if you were to ask police, or if you were to ask fire, they would all tell you that they need more bodies to do the job they have. So
Sure.
there is, when we create the budget, when we present the budget, there is consideration to say, we can probably be more effective by funding overtime as opposed to hiring 3 or 4 people, because trust me, when these department heads come in to do budget reviews, they all want more bodies to do more stuff to, you know, the constituents call in all the time like you said, they want clean streets, they want roads plowed, they want parks pristine, and so there is a balance there. And just the second point I'll make with regard to this is that my intent and the department's intent is always to live within its appropriation. So right now, because one of the 12 lines in the particular salary is running hot, and again, I think there's some reasons that it do so, it's my hope that we don't have to come back here to seek additional funds. I mean, that's, my ultimate goal is to try to have every department live within their appropriation. We come before you, ask for the money, we get that money, and then the day-to-day operations, the administration is diligently trying to balance that budget, and I think, at least in my 2 years here, we haven't come back here too often to ask for many supplemental appropriations other than the schools, which, that's a whole different animal. But I'm saying from the city side, while one line may be running hot and it may look like, hey, geez, what's going on here? We really think you should be a better steward of this account. Right now, I'm saying that, and I wish I brought the book out from the back room, but we're still within our percentage of burn rate to where we need to be, so,
And that's good, and I appreciate that fact. I understand that.
yeah.
And I appreciate that it's not so easy to set up a budget and then to live within a budget because you live in a world of uncertainty. So
Right.
things do happen, and I understand that. And we just happen to be, the piece on here tonight happened to be overtime, so I just was talking about that with that issue.
Yep.
And so overall, you're seeing that even though that one line is heavy, that within the remainder of the budget, things look like they're on track, or as far as a balance, does it look like in some other areas you're actually lower than anticipated? So that there's some sort
Again,
of-
in the general salary line of the department, we're certainly lower because when someone goes on a workers' compensation, for example, they come off of the budget
Payroll.
and they go into the workers' compensation
Sure.
pool, so that
So
that
that
capacity
salary
is
right there
there.
is
So,
safe.
so when that person or people are out, those jobs need to be done. So, it's hard to hire a new body to fill that position because this particular person or these people could come right back off of workers' comp.
Right.
Now I'm in a situation where I have to lay someone off and pay half their
Sure.
salary. So there's always a balance there. But yeah, as I see it, the salaries that, the salaries that are reserved for that individuals that aren't getting paid, helping to fund the overrun and the overtime at this point. And, it's, right now, we're very tight, but, again, my ultimate goal is to never come back here and ask for more money unless I absolutely have to. And that's when I've felt I've exhausted all the options I have within the orgs of the appropriation that
You're
you've
very good
had.
at what you do, and you're able to do that for the most part, so that's great. And I think that you were saying that there were roughly 4 or 5 individuals that have somehow, the loss of 4 or 5 individuals has somehow caused some of that overtime draw.
Some of it, I mean, again, it's not the entire thing, but that's,
Right.
in my glance of, looking to come before you and address this situation, I certainly, I mean, not only do I know what's going on, because I look at it all the time, but
Sure.
I have the same, much of the time, I have the same questions you guys have, and I'm.
I noticed we usually ask the same question.
Yeah, no, it's
So,
fine.
All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate the information. I
Yeah.
have no further questions.
Council Napolitano?
Yeah, thank you. And again, I found all the information you're giving us very helpful, but I share the same concerns that Councilman Paul has. I'm concerned at how much of the deficit of individuals that we're having people work overtime to compensate for versus people who are not scheduled to work weekends and holidays, who are working weekends and holidays, but time and a half, double time, whatever the case may be, whatever the collective bargaining agreement calls for. That's what I'm concerned with. I've very familiar with managing money, managing budget. I've done it in business years ago. I just want to make sure that the monies that we're dealing with are finite. We collect, we set the tax rate, we collect the taxes, we have fees come in, but there's only so much money when we budget, when we set the budget. And when the budget amount goes over that, then we need to look and see why that's happening. This is primarily why we've come to this. I'm curious to what's going on on the weekends, on holidays. I see the same thing. Street sweeping, running down Main Street on holiday. sure they're getting double time for that, to work on a holiday. I don't know that for certain, but the bottom line is it gives that appearance. So we just want to make sure that we're keeping tabs. And I'm very confident that you are. But it's the management of the individuals that are creating the overtime that is now creating the shortage of expenditures that are primarily concerned. But if it is possible, give us some type of you're talking about breakdown for the holiday, for the weekends, and if we can.
Okay, Counselor.
If I may, I don't want to cross debate, so I'll go through the chair. I was looking for, because I know you need to have people on for the weekends, because things happen over the weekend. So I'm not so concerned about overtime in general for the weekend. I was more concerned about how much overtime was being utilized to clean a street on a holiday or a weekend, and same thing with watering plants. That's what I was.
Those are the things that I feel, and people have called me and contacted me about, they feel add up over time. Well, I appreciate you coming up and providing us the information.
Sure, anytime.
Mayor, from the chair. I talked to a few city workers last weekend, just curious, I knew how we're shorthanded, and asked 3 of them what they thought more guys you would need. And like you said, it was 4 to 5 people would take the workload off, but you said with the insurance and all that, it just gets too expensive. But the question I have is, on Saturdays, if we're driving around, we see city workers working, is that their weekly, is that their schedule? If you see them on Saturdays, are they working like Tuesday to Saturday?
I believe there are some individuals, the night watchmen, and some have these maybe split shifts, more 12 to 8. There may be some that works Wednesday to Sunday. To sit here and tell you exactly who they are and how many there are, I don't feel comfortable with because I don't have that information, but I'll certainly gather that information on individuals that may work untraditional hours, so to speak.
I just want people to know, like, if they're sitting here watching this program right now, and 2 weeks from now, they see 4 guys doing the trash during the city, and they're saying, wait a minute, nothing's been done. I see 3 guys driving around picking up trash in the barrels, which has to be done, knowing that might just be their shift.
I'm just happy I heard no one say that they see them on Saturdays doing absolutely nothing.
Oh, no. But the other question was, if it come down to the budget and all this, with the street cleaning, we want the streets clean, can you have somebody who drives a sweep? I think you only have 2 or 3 guys, maybe, that have a license to drive that. Maybe for that certain Saturday, they can come in Tuesday to Saturday, and that wouldn't be overtime for them to sweep the street. Is that something?
I mean, everything's, you learn in this business, everything's subject to collective bargaining. I mean, we have management rights to do certain things, but if someone works on a Saturday, they may not be getting overtime, but they are probably getting a weekend premium. If they're working a night, they're probably getting some kind of night differential. And, again, a lot of that's looked at, especially during the budget process. If we can maneuver people's schedules during seasons, especially in the summer, you got later nights, you got ball games, you have a lot of stuff going on. Sure, you're trying to move some people to the night, so maybe they work a noon to 8 or a 1 to 9. And a lot of that, again, is managed and directed by the director, who kind of has a better feel of the day-to-day stuff. They bring it to us. And then, of course, there's always the decisions of whether you hire street sweepers to come in and do it as a contract work, but sometimes that's eliminating jobs of residents of the city. So there's a lot of things that go into consideration how we can save money. And is it worth saving money to have some of the people who work for the city not have jobs anymore? It's not as cut and dry as people think when you take into consideration the people and the families and such, but believe me, we explore it all.
Just one more question from the chair. On the overtime, you go by overtime, just example of where I work. Is there an overtime list that you go by?
Yeah, there's a call list. Yeah, they have a call list. If something comes up and there's overtime, I believe it rotates, and if you get it this day, the next guy gotta get it. Or you have to have the option to refuse it. Not a pro on that, but that is, certainly, can't just give it to one guy all the time, no.
I deal with it at work every day.
Yeah, then it's probably much like your work
Oh,
then.
yeah. Councilor Capone, you have a question?
I just wanted to make a final point. I want to make sure that we're crystal clear, not only in this room, but everyone who's watching, not questioning the effort. Because I said it during the budgets, I'll say it right here tonight, we are very fortunate in this city that we have many very dedicated and hardworking employees. So I don't want anyone to get confused with me questioning the effort, because I'm not questioning the effort. My concern is more with management of resources. That's where my concern lies.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and I appreciate you coming up.
That was only a joke,
No,
Counselor.
well, sometimes people at home don't understand.
All right,
And they say, hey, he's taking a shot at those hardworking people. And the reality is, we do, yourself included. We have a lot of very dedicated, hardworking people in this community. We're very fortunate to have them. And we're all just trying to do more with less. That's all we're looking
Oh,
for.
I understand, and I
So,
appreciate that.
But thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions, sir?
No, I just, first of all, I want to thank you for coming up. You know, I mean, I concur with Councilman Capone's sentiments. You know, this isn't in any way, shape, or form to suggest that, you know, we have people that are just, you know, put money in the pocket and not doing the job. I mean, there's no question, the city looks great, and we've got good, hardworking people. But again, we also have a finite number of resources that need to be managed to make sure that the money's there when we need it, absolutely need it to be spent, as opposed to times where possibly we don't need to necessarily spend it. What I would like to do is like to hold this over, if we could, if we could come back in a month, give us that breakdown, the weekend, that breakdown that the council had suggested, just so we get a little more detail into it. You know, in the meantime, perhaps we'll ask the acting directors of city services to come on also at that meeting, so we get a better sense of how they're managing the men and the time and the money. Because it's not what we're looking at, it's what our constituents are looking at, and the questions they raise, and the perception of what they think is what's going on. And the only way to clear out those perceptions is with facts. And the only way to get the facts is get the people involved that are directly involved in managing. So again, I want to thank you for the information you provided coming up here this evening. I'd like to make a motion to grant further time.
Granted.
Can I make one comment? I would just ask that, I think I heard your question, but for the next meeting, if you want to give me specifically some, this way I can at least try to answer exactly what you're asking and not assume. How much time?
Next month.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we'll get it, whatever time you give us, I'll make it happen. But, yeah, if you could just address, give me the specific on what you're looking for, I'll try my best to gather that information. Sure. Yep.
Richard, thank you for all the information. This part of the meeting is over, and we'll reconvene in the back. All in favor?
Aye.